Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Jay Croucher, filling in as host for Connor Rogers. He'll be back tomorrow, but today here with Matthew Berry, as always, and Lawrence Jackson. Today we're going to look at everything out of the preseason.
Do we know where Connor is? Do we even know where Connor is?
I ain't get the memo.
He's dealing with real estate issues.
Oh, good God!
He'll be back tomorrow.
That's why his lack of real estate acumen is why he's left his viewers, his faithful viewers, in the lurch.
I don't believe I may have misspoke with issues. It's more he's reaching a part of the process that has to take him away from the show. It's important, but he's taking care of it, and he'll be back.
What's interesting, because I was at the wedding. I met Kristen. I met his lovely wife. And honestly, I think we can all agree with this. The three of us were all at the wedding. I think we can all agree. We all know Kristen, right? She's the smart one. The truth of the matter is whatever transaction is happening here, Kristen's the one that should be handling it. Connor's just like, the good boy Charlie. You know what I mean? Like, right?
I think it's like Justin Jefferson being part of preseason games where he's not going to take the field, but he still has to be there. He still has to be on the sideline cheering on JJ McCarthy.
And root the team on, yeah.
Fair enough.
You got to be there. But anyway, Connor will be back tomorrow. Appreciate your effort to get us off the rails immediately, Matthew. So I'm going to capably steer us back on. And today we're going to talk about all the rookie quarterbacks, some other news about usage out of preseason. We'll get to 5 big questions about tight ends, and then hit on some news at the end about injuries, particularly Hollywood Brown and Malik Nabers, if we're going to call the second one an injury. But let's start off with the rookie quarterbacks with Caleb Williams, who had a pretty solid debut, had the beautiful pass going to his right to Cole Kmet down the sideline where he looked like Patrick Mahomes, looked like Josh Allen. Overall, he goes 4 for 7 for 95 passing yards, 13 rushing yards. Matthew, was there anything in that performance that made you adjust your opinion of Caleb Williams?
No, but I was always already high on him anyway. I mean, I think the guy's the real deal. And I think, to your point, like he made some whatever, 4 for 7, 95 yards. You're playing against vanilla defenses. You're not it's all small sample size. But my point is that if you had confidence in Caleb Williams prior to this game, I think you feel pretty good about that confidence. If you didn't have confidence on it, I think there were some throws, to your point, that you just sort of said like, okay, that's a real NFL throw. That's the kind of throw an NFL quarterback makes. And so, I was, listen, I've had Caleb Williams below Jayden Daniels in terms of rookie quarterbacks. We're going to get to future Hall of Famer and multiple Super Bowl champion Jayden Daniels in a minute. But ultimately, to me, the more interesting part about Caleb Williams' debut wasn't Caleb Williams, but was the usage of the Bears around him. I don't know, Lawrence, if you had any other thoughts about Caleb.
So I've got Caleb Williams ranked as my 10th best quarterback in fantasy this season. Had he come out here and went 4 for 7 for 31 yards and an interception, I wouldn't have changed off that. Whether he did, I guess, quote unquote good or quote unquote bad. You never want to let the small sample sizes that these young quarterbacks play affect the bigger picture. And I think that's the biggest takeaway we should all have. However, when they do come out and they do look as good as advertised, well, now you're feeling good. Now you know they're capable. Now you know they can get the ball. And I will say this quickly about Caleb Williams. We saw that run that he had. If he wanted to, he could run for 600 yards. So, depending on how much he integrates the rushing game here as a rookie, that could be an X factor in how he does in fantasy, because he has that in his skill set as well.
Yeah, I think the thing with preseason largely is it's kind of like NBA Summer League, where it doesn't matter so much if you're good because the expectation is you're going to be good. It's a big red flag if you're bad. So I don't think we can buy too much into players looking great. It's just ticking a box along the way. But I think the biggest thing to read into preseason, though, is just usage and not so much the stats that players compile. It's just how much are they on the field? What kind of snaps are they getting? And a part of that, Matthew, that surfaced in the Chicago game is that it seems like Rome Odunze is going to be clearly wide receiver 3 in 2 wide receiver sets. It was Keenan Allen out there with DJ Moore and not Odunze. Does this lower your opinion of Odunze, or do you think that was already baked into his ADP?
I think it lowers it a little bit. I think there's two things here. Look, I mean, ultimately, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen were still going to get drafted, right? And so I think, by the way, to me, I think you up Keenan Allen a little bit, because basically what happened is when they went 3 wide receivers, Keenan Allen played the slot. And when they went to 2, it was Keenan Allen and DJ Moore or Rome Odunze. Allen didn't really come off the field. And so I think a lot of people, again, it's one preseason game. It's small sample size, but it's all we have to work off right now. I think most people sort of thought DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, then Rome Odunze, and I would flip Keenan Allen and DJ Moore if I'm drafting today. Again, as the preseason goes on, we'll get more information. But to your point, look, they used both tight ends. Both Everett and Cole Kmet were out there quite a bit, and we'll talk about them in a second. You saw DeAndre Swift catch his pass. Like, he's going to be involved in the passing game. You've got Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. I worry that Rome Odunze is going to be, this is the easy comparison, but sometimes the easy comparison is the right one, which is that I'm worried it's going to be JSN all over again, which is, by the way, also Shane Waldron, the offense coordinator of the Bears, who formerly was with the Seattle Seahawks. The fact is that last year we were like, Jackson Smith and Jigba is the best wide receiver in this class. But unfortunately, you've got Lockett and DK Metcalf ahead of him, and just JSN never got, and he hurt a little bit in the preseason, whatever. But the fact is that the fantasy production last year did not match the talent of JSN. And I worry, because there are so many mouths to feed, that the same case may be happening with Rome Odunze. And just, I think as you're like, love him in Dynasty, no issue with him in best ball. But I think if you were looking for season-long redraft, you have to lower Odunze, or just understand his chance may not come, and if it does come, it's probably not going to come until the second part of the season, or if there's an injury to Keenan Allen or DJ Moore.
Yeah, just to clarify that, Matthew. So you would take, still DJ Moore is still the number 1 guy in Chicago. It's just that based on preseason, that Allen, in terms of relative to ADP, he gets the bigger bump.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, listen, there's more risk baked into Keenan Allen, obviously, because of his age, because of injury history, and DJ Moore is the more explosive player. But I think they're, again, if you take health out of it, I think their production is going to be I think they're going to be a lot closer, especially in full PPR leagues, because Allen's going to play the slot, and I just think he's going to get peppered with targets. So that's all I'm saying is that it seems like in terms of playing time pecking order, Allen's not coming off the field. At least, again, this is all small sample size. We're talking whatever. We're not talking a ton of snaps here.
Keenan Allen's coming off a 1,200-yard season in 13 games. Like, him and DJ Moore basically had the same numbers last year. This is like 1A, 1B, and like you said, Matthew, you take the health issues out, because Keenan Allen did miss 3 or 4 games, but he still had 1,200 yards. That's a career year on a per game basis. So you mentioned playing the slot. It's closer than what people think. I think it was always going to be tough for Rome to get in there and really do numbers as a rookie, unless one of the aforementioned DJ Moore or Keenan Allen goes down.
Yep. All right, let's move on.
The other thing, by the way, real quickly on the other thing is that this is, I did my 100 facts column, which is up on rotoworld.com right now, 100% free. Please go check it out. 100 facts you need to know before you draft. It's one of my favorite columns I write every year. This year's edition came out really well. I'm really happy with how this one's came out. But Lawrence, to your point, one fact that I didn't put in that I had, and I just, whatever, you only have 100 facts to play with, so you got to pick and choose. But the fact of the matter is that DJ Moore had that unbelievable Thursday night game against my Commanders, where he just lit us up, where Ron Rivera decided to not guard him, and just leave him in single coverage, on and on. Anyway, whatever. Don't get me started on Ron Rivera's defense. But the fact of the matter is DJ Moore lit us up for 3 touchdowns, and I think he had off the top of my head. I think he had
230.
1,000 yards in that game. So I think he had 400 receptions for 1,000 yards in that one game alone. But in all seriousness, if you take that one game out, like there was a significant amount of DJ Moore's fantasy production that came from that one game. And so again, taking that game out, which just skewed everything, DJ Moore had a good year. He didn't have as good a year as you might think just looking at the raw numbers.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Commanders, Jayden Daniels, who will go to next, Lawrence, he goes 2 for 3 for 45 yards through the air. He has a 3-yard rushing touchdown on a designed run, which I think is instructive. What did you make of Jayden Daniels, Lawrence?
That touchdown, that 3-yard touchdown run was more important to me as a fantasy manager than that deep ball reception completion to Dynamic Brown. This is why, because that lets you know that that's what this offense is thinking when they get near that goal line. Again, let's say Jayden Daniels throws an interception on that deep ball. Well, then his stats look completely different, right? Especially only playing one drive. But I still be feeling good about him. He's my quarterback 8 this season, and we kind of I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, too, Matthew, as you proudly wear that Washington, that looks fairly new, that Washington Commanders.
New Era. My buddies at New Era sent this to me, and it's I got to break this in.
I'll have you know, Matthew, that Drew Brees told me, I didn't have to, poach it out of him. He said he really liked Jayden Daniels. We was just talking quarterbacks a little bit, and he went out his way to talk about how much he likes Jayden Daniels. So there you go. If a Hall of Famer saying it, that's good there.
Name drop, Lawrence.
Yeah,
very good name drop. Very good, very casual name drop. Very well done.
To Drew.
Just talking to Drew. But I like Drew Brees, current Hall of Famer, talking about future Hall of Famer Jayden Daniels.
It works out all good.
That's the kind of respect they have for each other in Canton.
Maybe Jayden Daniels will go in as a New Orleans Saints as well after he signs with them in 6 years.
You know what? You bite your tongue.
But basically,
Now, those are fighting words, Jay Croucher. Don't make me insult your children. For the love of God, you're hitting below the belt now.
Yeah, way low sample size. I'm sure he'll get to play a little more the next game. And now, Matthew, I'll let you enjoy this here. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Look, you don't want to make too much of it, but is he the number one quarterback in fantasy? I think it's a conversation. No. In all seriousness, he played 11 snaps. He had 3 dropbacks as well. But that 42-yard dime to Dynamic Brown, I think, to your point, Lawrence, it was supposed to be a screen. Dan Quinn talked about it after the game, where it was supposed to be a screen pass, and Jayden Daniels just, sort of quote without permission, checked out of it, and it worked out. And I think, just that he has that command, regardless of whatever, and obviously the coaching staff will be more than happy and they'll live with that, right? But basically, I think the important part there is that he already has, to me the biggest takeaway there is that Jayden Daniels already has this much of a command of Cliff Kingsbury's offense that in the very first preseason game, he can check out of it at the line of scrimmage and audible to Dynamic Brown, who knows what he's talking about, and then they complete a 42-yard bomb, right? And so, to me, that's the most interesting thing there as well. Also, I thought the other thing that's really interesting here is that he scored a rushing touchdown, which was a designed run. And this is somebody who scored a lot of rushing touchdowns at LSU over the last 2 years. But I think because of the way he's built his frame, the thought process is when they get in close, they're probably going to give it to Brian Robinson, who's as good a goal line back as there is in the NFL these days. And, oh, by the way, you've also got Austin Eckler there, a guy who, 2 of the last 3 years has scored close to 20 touchdowns a season. So I think that the fact that if we can pencil in, 5-6 rushing touchdowns for Jayden Daniels over the course of the year, which I don't think is outrageous. Again, you might be too low on him at 8.
I know.
And I'll say this.
But it's
I'll say
just
this.
so many quarterbacks.
There's so many quarterbacks there are
that get rushing yards and touchdowns.
I will just say this. There's a number of mobile quarterbacks that are on the list for potential ride or die candidacy this year. There's some wide receivers and running backs as well. But Jayden Daniels is on the list. I'm just telling you right now. Jayden Daniels is on the list.
Shocker.
You know?
Shocker.
So's Anthony Richardson. So's, a lot of guys are on the list. But I'm excited about. I'm very excited about Jayden Daniels.
I think you should go with Kyler Murray. The more I think about it, but that's a discussion
He's on the
for another
list as
day.
well.
Yeah,
Jake
well,
Roger. Kyler Murray's also on the list as well.
Yeah, a guy who's probably.
I might go back to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I might double down.
You can't do that. Don't go back to Jalen Hurts either.
But like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, they're on the list. Marvin Harrison Jr. on the list. Anyway, we'll get to it. But
I'd stay away from Olave. Don't want to. I don't want to. I'd stay away from Olave. Don't want to tie myself to Derek Carr and the New Orleans offense for now.
Fair,
but he does have the talent. Clearly,
I get insane talent and massive target share coming this year for Olave.
All right. Well, presumably not a ride or die candidate. Lawrence is JJ McCarthy, though he does have a lot of upside, a lot of variance. Doesn't seem like he's going to be the week 1 starter at this point, but the door hasn't been completely closed on that. And there is a chance, of course, that he gets in at some point. He played well in the preseason. He goes 11 for 17, 188 yards through the air, 18 rushing yards, which I think is important as part of JJ's profile in fantasy. Has 2 touchdowns, beautiful touchdown down the left sideline, throws a pick as well. But what did you think of JJ's game, Lawrence?
Yeah, what you wanted to see with him was to push the ball down the field. It was good to see him recover after throwing that early interception. And like you said, getting the ball down the field, that directly ties to Justin Jefferson's game there. Now, I'll say this. You're playing behind a guy like Sam Darnold, right? This isn't Michael Penix to Kirk Cousins here. If J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold are playing even throughout this preseason, I don't see how you don't just start off with J.J. McCarthy when you just took him in the top half of the first round. So that'll be interesting to see as we move forward. Also, if he does continue to play well, J.J. McCarthy, maybe we will see Justin Jefferson as we go through August. We'll see him get closer to being that first receiver drafted off the board, because it's like, he does have a quarterback that should be able to get him the ball. Yeah, he gonna go through his rookie mistakes. That's a given. But if you could just get Justin Jefferson the ball and ensure that he's a 1,400, 1,500 yard receiver, then why not? So it could be effective to not only Justin Jefferson, not only J.J. McCarthy, but his weapons as well in the offense.
Yeah, keep in mind that J.J. McCarthy, again, you mentioned this, right? The numbers were pretty good on McCarthy. 11 of 17, 188 yards, the 2 touchdowns. He does throw a pick, but he scrambles twice for 18 yards. Played 30 snaps, right? 19 dropbacks on those 30 snaps. I think that's interesting. And the other piece here is, like, no Justin Jefferson, no Jordan Addison, no T.J. Hawkinson. Like, again, wait till J.J. McCarthy gets to play with the actual players, and, all due respect to Jalen Naylor. But you know what I mean? Like wait till he gets to play with the starters. And so I'm with Lawrence here. I think if I'm a Vikings fan, and I'm not, but I think if I were, I'd be excited about the future with J.J. McCarthy. This will not be the first time, nor the last time, that Sam Darnold has lost his job to a promising quarterback behind him. J.J. McCarthy is going to be the starter for the Vikings. It's just a matter of when. Yeah, I think if I'm the Vikings front office, I think you start it sooner rather than later. But I was impressed with again. You're playing against backups. It's all small sample, but just all the caveats apply there. But
you just want to look decent. That's it.
You wanted him to. I thought J.J. McCarthy looked better than I think most people expect him to look. How's that?
I think as well, for a team that's like by the odds projected to be 4th last in their division, that Minnesota is a really fantasy-rich offensive context. Just with that O-line, with obviously Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, we don't know what's going to happen with the suspension, but expect he'll be there the majority of the season. T.J. Hawkinson comes back, and then you have a good offensive-minded head coach there in Kevin O'Connell as well.
By the way, Aaron Jones didn't play as well. Aaron Jones is a really good pass-catching running back. We saw some nice work out of Ty Chandler as well. Like, they've got weapons there, and like you can joke, but like Johnny Munt is not a zero. Johnny Munt's not a zero at tight end. No, seriously, he's not T.J. Hawkinson, but he's not like a zero. I don't think he's a zero at the tight end position. And so I agree with you that it is a fantasy rich environment, a fantasy friendly environment for sure.
Yeah, that might be a solid 8 out of 10 fantasy team name. Johnny Munt is not a zero. I don't mind that at all. Well,
Yep.
also not a zero, Bo Nix, who had a very solid debut as well. He goes 15 for 21, 125 yards through the air with a touchdown. Also had 17 yards on the ground, which is a part of Nix's game and why he is perhaps more fantasy friendly than you would expect for someone who I don't think anyone is projecting to be, a top 15, 20 quarterback in the league this year necessarily. Also as an offensive-minded head coach, naturally with Sean Payton. Lawrence, do you think that Nix, just with that rushing upside with Sean Payton there, is he being slept on a little bit as a fantasy option?
I don't know if he being slept on as a fantasy option because I think in one quarterback leagues, it'll take us a while before we actually feel confident in starting him. Obviously, in Superflex, you could put him on the roster. But I will say this, same deal with JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold. If you got, just like a regular dude like Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, and then you're the backup. Like if the first round rookie is playing even or better, obviously you're gonna go with him as a starter. I think Bo Nix probably has a better chance of starting week 1 than JJ McCarthy, just based off what Sean Payton has said about him all throughout camp. He hasn't been reported to be coming along slowly or nothing like that. Then he gets out there in the field and he puts together a nice little half's work of play. So I would say what you do is you hope to see him kind of work with the ones next time. How does he work with Cortland Sutton and stuff like that? Again, you just want to know that your young quarterback could get your guys the ball, and Sean Payton is going to do everything to make that happen because this is his guy.
Yeah, I agree with Lawrence there, and I do think that there might be some sneaky fantasy production out of Denver. Sean Payton has traditionally been kind of a push the ball down the field, a fantasy friendly coach, if you will. He's aggressive with his play calling. He likes to throw it. There are, the fact is, they did get rid of Jerry Jeudy, but they kept Cortland Sutton. They have Marvin Mims. They have, if Greg Dulcich can stay healthy, like I think he becomes pretty interesting at tight end.
Tim Patrick as well is being, Tim Patrick got run with the starters.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a number of guys there that suddenly you're like, okay, are we expecting this to be the Kansas City Chiefs? No, but do we expect this, or the Chiefs of old? No one wants to be the Chiefs from last year, but you know what I mean. We don't expect this to be greatest show on turf or anything like that. But I do think it's going to be a better offense fantasy wise than probably people expect, and I do think Bo Nix becomes interesting in deeper leagues, super flex, 2 quarterback leagues, or certainly dynasty leagues. I agree with Lawrence. He's not somebody that's on the 1 quarterback radar, but I like Bo Nix, and I think they like him as well. And I think his skill set is perfectly suited for the kind of offense that Sean Payton wants to run, which is one of the reasons why, obviously, they drafted him.
Yeah, I don't think Bo Nix should be 20-1 to an offensive rookie of the year either, compared to Caleb Williams, who's plus 140 range, and Jayden Daniels, who's plus 600 range. It seems like Bo Nix is going to start. I think those guys are going to be better than him, but there's enough unknowns with these quarterbacks that I think it should be a little bit closer together.
If the Broncos win, if the Broncos make the playoffs, if Bo Nix starts every game and the Broncos make the playoffs, he's right there. And I agree with you, Jay.
I think he wins it if the Broncos is making playoffs and Bo Nix. First off, if Jarrett Stidham is starting, they ain't making no playoffs.
Right, exactly. But all I'm saying, Lawrence, is just that you look at that division, and other than the Chiefs, there's not a team that really scares you. And that my point is that I think we all expect the Chiefs to win that division, but could the Broncos get a wild card spot? Absolutely. There's easily a scenario where the Raiders, the Raiders with their own quarterback issues, and the Chargers who are banged up, and we'll see how they adapt to Harbaugh's style, which sometimes takes a while to sort of, he's a very focused individual, and sometimes it takes a little while for people to adjust to his style, which is very intense. So anyway, it's not crazy to think the Broncos finish second in that division.
Yeah,
I'm not predicting it, but I don't think that's out of the range of
possibilities. No, that part is not crazy at all, to be honest. The playoff part, because you got the AFC East teams and the AFC North teams, they definitely gonna get in the way of that.
For sure.
They're plus 750 to make the playoffs, so that probably doesn't reconcile with Knicks being 20-1. Like, if it seems like he's going to start, and if they're plus 750 to make the playoffs, I don't think he's less than a 50% chance to win if they do make it, which is what the odds say. So, I don't mind that. All right, let's go speed round through some non-quarterbacks and their playing time and usage in this first round of preseason
we'll go back
game.
and forth here.
Yeah, Matthew, let's start with Keon Coleman, 100% route participation on 2 drives with the starters. Big X factor for the Bills. There are worlds where he could be their number 1 wide receiver. Are you upgrading Coleman at all after the weekend?
I think you have to, right? You mentioned there were 2 drives with the starters, right? He basically had a 27% target share. Now, again, Matt Collins didn't play in this one as well. Curtis Samuel didn't play the first drive, but still, like, Keon Coleman, who, there's been different reports about in terms of his camp. The fact that he played that many snaps, he's on that many dropbacks with the first team starters, and given his role in this offense, he is the deep threat. I think you absolutely have to move Keon Coleman up in your ranks. And when my rankings update comes out later this week, he'll be higher up for sure.
Lawrence, Andrei Iosivas, 86% route participation with Burrow, played a lot in the slot. And then also Jermaine Burton goes 3 for 82 and a touchdown as a 38-yard touchdown reception there. What do you make of the Bengals pass catches?
Yeah, both of them played really well. Andrei Iosivas, though, is the one who started with Joe Burrow, and that's what's important right now. I think we just kind of need to keep watching the preseason games, see how it feels out, and see who wins that slot role for the Bengals, because it'll be important.
Yep. Just quickly, Brock Bowers, we're going to cover in the next segment. He and Michael Mayer, they both played over 75% of snaps with the starters. Think that the Raiders, just as a team that wants to run the ball, that is going to embrace that kind of perhaps older fashioned style of football. They might be in 12 personnel a bit, so there might be room for both of those guys to provide value.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important part, right? I mean, think about this. So, their offense coordinator is Luke Getsky, who used to be with the Bears and run a lot of 12 personnel with them. You think about Antonio Pierce and what he did once he took over the Raiders last year. They want to run the ball. They want to run the ball and play good defense, right? And so it's easier to run in 12 personnel when you've got both. Not that anyone's expecting Brock Bowers to be an amazing blocker or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is that I think they will be in 12 personnel quite a bit, because other than Adams and Jacoby Myers, there's not really another wide receiver that, we've got to find a way to get him on the field. So I think seeing both guys on there, so Bowers posted a 79% snap rate with the starters, Michael Mayer 86%. And I just want to give a shout out to my guy, Dwayne McFarland at fantasylife.com. So Dwayne watched every single preseason game, charted every single snap, and he has an entire article that talks about all the route participation, all the snaps with the starters, every single notable nugget. It's an unbelievable article. So we're taking a lot of information from this. And so Dwayne in his article notes this. Obviously, it's a small sample size, but the last time we saw that type of playing time, 79% and 86% snap rates with the starters, the last time we saw that kind of playing time for 2 starting tight ends was New England with Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. So now, on a downside, again, as Dwayne notes, Bowers and Meyer each only had a 50% route participation, but still, the fact of the matter is they're out there, they're playing a bunch of snaps. I think the routes will come as they get more comfortable with the passing offense. They're still not sure whether it's going to be O'Connell or Minshew under center as well. Understand their offensive line was a bit beat up in this game as well. They didn't have all the starters in for that. So I do think if you're a Bowers believer this year, I think this was encouraging. And so again, just shout out to Dwayne McFarland at fantasylife.com. Just tons of great information. Highly recommend you looking at that article. It's 100% free. It is the single most useful article, I think, in the entire preseason, because he goes through every game and every player and all the usage and defines what it means and what it doesn't.
Indeed. Well, usage, personnel, Taysom Hill plays in every personnel package, Lawrence,
yes.
And gets used in weird and creative ways. He played 67% of snaps with the starters. Is he a guy that you think you'll be drafting a lot relative to ADP?
He just might be. I watched that game, the Saints versus the Cardinals, and they did not lie. I saw him line up in the slot. He lines up at tight end. He was lined up at fullback for a couple plays in front of Alvin Kamara. And like you said, 67% of the snaps there, He's always going to be good for about a touchdown every other game. I would just say, though, it's not somebody, Taysom Hill is not somebody I'm actually targeting. I would like him as my second tight end. If you're punting the tight end position and you get a guy like Brock Bowers, then I would pair a guy like Taysom Hill with him if I don't get one of those top tier tight ends.
Matthew, a guy who's getting a lot of buzz in terms of words about him out of camp is Quentin Johnston. Not as much buzz coming from actions and things he's actually doing on the field. He didn't get to play until the third drive. Are you fading the idea that Quentin Johnston is going to be a huge part of this offense?
I am. I'm not a fan. Understand that Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer did not play in this game, right? So to your point, DJ Shark and Brendan Rice started. Think about the Chargers offense just overall. They want to be run heavy. We know that under Harbaugh and Greg Roman, their offense coordinator, they want to be run heavy. And so now you're like, okay, you've got Josh Palmer, and if you read 100 Facts, you know, like I'm pro Josh Palmer, and I do like McConkey quite a bit as well. Now you've got DJ Shark. The fact that Quentin Johnston didn't see the field until the third drive, he played 6 drives, he failed to earn a target. As far as we know, he's not injured. Like where's the production going to come from for Quentin Johnston? Again, like I'm not convinced there's enough targets to go around in this offense that wants to be run heavy. I'm not convinced there's enough targets for McConkey, Shark, and Palmer. So now, like I guess the best case scenario is that Johnston replaces DJ Shark in 3 receiver sets, like because you're gonna have or even a 2, out wide because McConkey's playing the slot. That's the expectation here, and you've got Josh Palmer. He's very inconsistent, and he doesn't seem that polished, and like he's not a guy that performed well last year as a rookie, and it's a whole new regime. It's a new general manager, it's a new head coach, it's a new offense coordinator. Like he's not their guy. McConkey's their guy, and I don't know. He'll be cheap enough in drafts that if you want to take a flyer, I don't hate it, but there are a lot better late round flyers to take a dart throw on than him.
Yep. It seems like there are lots of worlds where he's wide receiver 3 or 4 for a team that doesn't really want to pass the ball and has a quarterback who's dealing with plantar fasciitis at the moment. So it doesn't seem to be lining up for QJ. Before we move on, Matthew, any other preseason nuggets that you wanted to throw out?
I just want to mention that I thought there were 2 things. First off, Brian Thomas played 100% of the snaps with the Jaguars. And so again, like we talked about with Keon Coleman, like that's pretty interesting. Again, Trevor Lawrence last year loved to throw deep, didn't connect all the time with Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's moved on to the Titans, obviously. And so I think they're starting when they go, like Christian Kirk will be on the field all the time. And like when they're in 2 wide receiver sets, Kirk will move outside. But I remember talking to Doug Peterson at the head coach, Doug Peterson at the combine. And I asked him about that. He said, we prefer Christian Kirk in the slot. That's where he's more effective. It's where he's more comfortable. We think that's the best spot for him. So I think you're going to see a lot of, Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, and then Christian Kirk in the slot. I think that's the Jacksonville Jaguars, base personnel. I think that's what they're going to run a lot of this upcoming season. And given the inconsistency of Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas becomes pretty interesting to me. The other one I wanted to mention here real quickly was Malik Washington. Again, shout out to Dwayne who pointed this out. But Malik Washington for the Dolphins started. He played the first 9 drives, 17% target share. He also had 1 carry for 21 yards. Super fast. Now, obviously, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle didn't play, but given how high octane the Dolphins offense is, and given the fact that both Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill have missed time over the last couple of years with injuries, Malik Washington is somebody I like. I'd rather take a flyer on Malik Washington late than QJ, just to give an example, right? With second to last round pick, something like that, and keep him on my bench in case something happens to Waddle or Tyreek Hill. But just a name that I wanted to mention, that if there was an injury to either one of those guys, he's a name for deeper leagues, and he's also a name that should be on your radar for immediately hit the waiver wire if you see that Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle is going to miss time.
Okay. Well, Fantasy football just got better this season, gentlemen. $1 million better. Create or join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes, plus earn extra entries to win when players on your roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion to learn more. All right, 5 big tight end questions into 2024. Let's start with you, Lawrence. As Matthew discussed with Andy Reid at the Combine, there is this idea that Travis Kelce is going to be on not necessarily a pitch count, but just lowered snaps naturally as he gets older. Is that a concern for you, or do you think that just with the amount of times he's going to get targeted with his touchdown equity that he is still clearly the number one tight end in fantasy?
And by the way, Lawrence, I just want to ask you, I have another question to add on to Jay. Did you notice what Jay just did there? Because I have to tell you, that's the way you name drop. I know you tried to give yourself, some cred with mentioning Drew Brees, but what I did is I had Jay mention that I talked to Andy Reid at the Combine. That way, I don't look like I'm trying to hype myself up. I have somebody else do it, Lawrence, and that's the pro way to do it.
But see, we now we got 3 name drops because you got Doug Peterson.
Is that really a name drop though? Come on.
I mean, hey, it's levels to this. It's definitely levels to this. So you got
Peterson out here taking shrapnel. Yeah,
you got Andy Reid and Drew Brees, and then you got Doug Peterson, Super Bowl.
We love Doug Peterson here,
champion coach, by the way. But we love the name dropping. And
anyway, Jay, you were talking about my exclusive interview with Andy Reid that I had at the Combine. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's fairly even with Drew Brees, definitely. And speaking of Travis Kelce, I don't think it's a concern, Jay. I think it's fine because you want Travis Kelce on the field when it counts. He's still, especially now with the Hollywood Brown injury, Travis Kelce's gonna matter even more. It will be a situation though where we won't see Travis Kelce blowing the field away. I see Matthew has him as his tight end 2. He's my tight end 3. Last season, 4 other tight ends finished within 1 point per game in fantasy to Travis Kelce last season. So you can see the gap kind of closing. He'll still give you those top tier numbers. He's still going to be close to touching 1,000 yards and up towards 100 catches. So it's nothing crazy. It's just that the younger guys is starting to catch up now.
To me, that's the big point there, right? Is Travis Kelce still going to be awesome this year? Because even if he plays less snaps, the snaps that he does play are going to be high leverage snaps. They're not throwing him out there to block, right? I mean, he's going to be in the red zone. He's still going to be a target for Patrick Mahomes. We'll still see Taylor Swift in a bunch of games. He'll still want to get touchdowns for Taylor, all of that. I think Lawrence's point is absolutely right, that the big reason why you drafted Kelce in the first round last year was because not only was he elite, but he was so much better than every other player at the position. He was significantly better. He was giving you a 4 to 5 point, if not more, advantage every single week at a tough position. But now, once Hawkinson comes back, but I have Sam Laporta as my number 1 tight end. I think you could, if a year from now we're talking about Trey McBride as the number 1 tight end in fantasy, I don't think that's going to shock anyone. I don't think Mark Andrews as the number 1 tight end in fantasy would shock anyone as well. Evan Ingram put together a really nice year there. There's a couple other guys that are also sort of in the mix. And again, once Hawkinson comes back on a point per game basis, he could be right there. So just, I have Kelce at tight end too, but that's the difference there is just he's an elite tight end, but he's not in a class by himself anymore. There's now a number of guys that are right there in that tier with Kelce.
Yep. Lawrence Scoe finished tight end 11 last year, though did really pick it up after a slow first 6 weeks as Dalton Kincaid. Do you think there's a chance that he could be Buffalo's leading receiver this season?
Yeah, there's definitely a chance, and especially after watching him run with the Bills' first offense, which they did start out in 12 personnel. So Dawson Knox was also on the field, so take note of that. But you like to see him, Dalton Kincaid, that is, lining up in line. That goes to show you that they're willing to put him anywhere alongside the line, not just as some big slot receiver out there. He does have a chance, especially when you have 3 receivers in Samuel, Shakir, and Keon Coleman. None of them have to this point, separated as as a top tier receiver in the league. So being that Dawson Knox has had success in the past with Josh Allen, and Dawson Knox has been fantasy relevant, I believe Dalton Kincaid and his skill set, he's getting drafted at about the right spot, I would say.
Yeah, I am pro Dalton Kincaid. So 75% route participation. Again, Josh Allen played only 8 snaps, right? 8 snaps, 4 dropbacks, 75% route participation. It's all insanely small sample size here. But I think what's encouraging here, without Stephon Diggs and without Gabe Davis, there are 241 targets up for grabs. And yes, the numbers with and I pointed this out on 100 Facts, the numbers with the Dalton Kincaid numbers with Dawson Knox on the field are much lower than when Dawson Knox was out. And obviously Dawson Knox is now healthy. But having said that, they like Knox as in the red zone, but they like him more as a blocker. I think Dalton Kincaid is a special player. We talked about this with Connor Rogers last year, that he thought coming out of the draft last year that Dalton Kincaid had the best hands of anyone, not the best hands of a tight end, the best hands of anyone coming out of the draft last season. He is basically a receiver that qualifies at tight end here as well. 54 slot targets last year. That was the 3rd most among any tight end. And again, he didn't really start getting to play more until Dawson Knox had that first injury. So I think sort of sky's the limit for him. With 241 targets, you're going to see some Khalil Shakir. You're going to see some Curtis Samuel. We talked about Keon Coleman as well. But ultimately, I think at the tight end position, he's my tight end 5. I think Kincaid's going to have a really big year. I'm not worried about Dawson Knox all that much.
Yeah,
as it relates to eating into Dalton Kincaid's production, it's going to be a high octane offense. He's playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Proud fantasy life investor Josh Allen.
Okay, very good to get that one in.
Yeah.
I think
name drop.
The other thing too with Kincaid is that, and I believe he spoke to us a little bit about this on Radio Row at the Super Bowl, is there just has to be a steeper learning curve playing with Josh Allen and getting used to Allen's tendencies, how he creates in chaos. There just has to be a steeper curve there than like learning to play tight end with like Derek Carr or something, just because. And we saw that there was a few balls that came off of Kincaid's hands from Allen, where Allen just, he throws these frozen ropes at 500 miles an hour. And I think year 2 that Kincaid should have a little bit more of a rapport with Allen. Speaking of year 2 of something, or in this case, maybe year 3, going to run this question back again, Matthew. Are we finally going to see the Kyle Pitts breakout in 2024?
I think so. I think so. Since Kirk Cousins became a starter, we saw this in Washington, we saw this in Minnesota, and I believe we'll see this in Atlanta. Kirk Cousins is top 5 in the NFL in terms of targets and completions to tight ends. Then you also think about sort of, you're just, all right, Kirk Cousins dropped backs to pass. Who's he throwing to? Right? You've got Drake London, you've got Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. That's about it till you get to Kyle Pitts. It's unfortunate. I don't mean to but we haven't really talked about this, but Rondell Moore suffered an injury. He is done for the year, unfortunately. So that is somebody the Falcons were counting on this year as well. So no Rondell Moore, and so you'll have Darnell Mooney there. But I don't know. I think just Kyle Pitts is such a talented player and such a mismatch that they will be able to use him. That Kirk Cousins likes the tight end as well, and so Kyle Pitts is tight end 9. So I'm kind of back. I'm back in on him as a low end tight end 1, and certainly it wouldn't surprise me if he bested those numbers. Like, we're expecting this to be a very good fantasy friendly, high octane offense under Zach Robinson in Atlanta with Kirk Cousins under center. Lawrence, your thoughts?
I didn't hear it when you was mentioning those tight ends earlier. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Trey McBride finishes tight end 1 or Mark Andrews. What about Kyle Pitts here?
What about Kyle Pitts?
I think the biggest problem he's had in these 3 years, well, there's 2. It's the touchdowns. And we saw a lot of low touchdown numbers with Julio Jones back in his playing days, right? Kyle Pitts has 6 in 44 games. That's one problem. People forget, though, as a rookie, he had 1,000 yards receiving, but 1 touchdown. That 1,000 yards receiving was with Matt Ryan. So here's where the other problem comes in. His quarterbacks after Matt Ryan: Marcus Mariota, the great Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke were his quarterbacks after Matt Ryan. So now you get Kirk Cousins in there, who is the best quarterback he'll be working with since Matt Ryan. And like you said, Matthew, who they going to throw the ball to? We kind of got to see what the offense is going to run like. We saw it with Michael Penix the other day. And if it's run like that, then I don't see how Kyle Pitts doesn't eat this season.
Yep. No, I agree with that. Again, it feels like year 4 now of Pitts being maybe the highest variance tight end to draft. Another guy I think is somewhat high variance just because of how pronounced his splits were with Deshaun Watson versus Joe Flacco is David Njoku, who quietly ended the season from week 7 onwards last year as tight end 2, but basically all of that production, all of the really meaningful production came with Flacco at quarterback. Matthew, he's going around tight end 8 at the moment. Do you think that he's being overlooked in drafts?
I don't think he's being overlooked. He's my tight end 10, so he's actually going higher than I have him ranked here. To your point, like, you know, in 11 career games with Deshaun Watson, he's averaging 8.8 fantasy points per game. His 5 games with Flacco last year, he averaged 18.2. So, I mean, this really, really stark. Listen, here's the positives of Njoku. He doesn't come off the field. He's one of the best similar to like Rob Gronkowski. Like, what's underrated about Njoku is how unbelievably good he is as a blocker. So he is not like kind of one of these move tight ends that just sort of is only in there for pass plays and you know doesn't really block that much. Njoku's like an unbelievable blocker, and so he's on the field on every single snap basically, and that when plays break down, so he's there and then he can release and go out for a pass. So that's exciting, and obviously I think he really kind of had a breakout last year in terms of showing his pass catching ability. He was so good down the stretch, and I don't think if you didn't have him on your team, you probably didn't realize it. You know, everyone was making such a big deal about Flacco's run, which, Jay, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Joe Flacco won Comeback Player of the Year.
Is that right?
A lot of people thought DeMar Hamlin was going to do it. Lawrence, I have a friend that put like literally 6 figures of bets on DeMar Hamlin. I don't want to mention his name, but like a massive amount of money. The kind of money you could buy a house with.
Don't introduce
on
me
DeMar
to that
Hamlin
guy.
winning, and Joe Flacco is the guy who ended up winning Comeback Player of the Year.
Unbelievable.
So a lot of people were talking about Flacco, but maybe not Njoku. But to answer your question about Njoku, we haven't seen Deshaun Watson be the Houston version of Deshaun Watson, and we just don't know if that guy is still in there. So the negatives of Njoku, I think the talent is there, and I think he sort of proved himself and the playing time is going to be there. The concern is the numbers so far with Watson aren't great. He's competing with targets not just with Amari Cooper, but they acquired Jerry Jeudy this offseason, so now you've got Jerry Jeudy in the mix. I know they want to get Elijah Moore more involved. They saw him trying to force feed him the ball last year. Cedric Tillman. Me and Connor Rogers, we both love Cedric Tillman. He's having a very strong camp. So there's some mouths to feed there. So again, I'm a tight end 10. The positives are he also led all tight ends last year in end zone targets. He's a nice big target in the end zone, which they don't really have in terms of red zone threat. So as with every question with Cleveland, it comes down to which Deshaun Watson do we get this year? We're just not sure yet. So I think it's about right. I think he's a low end tight end 1, but I think Njoku is a guy, Lawrence, that has a higher variance than most tight ends going in that range. Because if you told me Njoku finished as tight end 3, I'd be like, I get it, because he's that physical a beast, and like he's so good and so good in the red zone. And in theory, Watson could be a good quarterback. Like we saw it for 5 games last year. He was unbelievable. Yeah, but if you told me Njoku finished as tight end 15, I also would believe it, because Watson's been bad with him, and we haven't seen the Deshaun Watson we've expected to date in Cleveland.
Yeah, not only his him being well in the red zone, but his run after the catch is pretty good too. And I just think it's like hard to see that, right? And then come into the next season, regardless of who's at quarterback, and say, oh, we got to worry about getting Jeudy, this amount of touches or something like that. Like David Njoku has to be that second guy after Amari Cooper. After this, sometimes you just got to get your top guys to damn football.
Yeah, Just thinking about it now, Matthew, because I kind of zoned out for the past 45 seconds after you said Joe Flacco's name. If Deshaun Watson wins comeback player of the year this year, the year after DeMar Hamlin lost, I'll give the game away. I'll have nothing left. It'll just absolutely break me. That feels like it might be coming. People are going to talk themselves into the Deshaun Watson comeback story if he's awesome this year. It's like, what's he actually coming back from? Anyway, last question as part of the tight end slate. Matthew, will Brock Bowers see enough targets to be a difference maker?
I don't think so. I'm a tight end 12, so I don't have him ranked as a difference maker. I don't think he will. I don't think he will. After Antonio Pierce took over last year, right, week 9 on, the Raiders were 22nd in pass rate. They were a bottom 10 offense in terms of pass rate. And so nothing they've done this offseason that makes me think they want to change how they're built. I understand they drafted Brock Bowers, and you're sort of like, but like everything Antonio Pierce has sort of said and done this season is they want to run the ball. Like to your point, Lawrence, in terms of get your best players the ball, they have Devontae Adams, they have Jacoby Myers, and so I'm sure Bowers will have some nice moments. I'm sure Bowers will, he's a super talented guy, but your question is, will he see enough volume to be a difference maker? And I don't think he will this year. I'm just concerned about, again, him and Mayer were out there. They're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, as we talked about earlier in the show. But just this is not a team that, like Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, like how confident do you feel that those guys, this is going to be a wide open offense? Like if you're Antonio Pierce and you're looking at the roster as currently constructed, and by the way, and think about what they did last year down the stretch where they turned it around and it got Antonio Pierce the job full time. Like you want to run the hell out of the ball and play good defense.
Yeah.
Like you're in the end. You're not gonna outsling. Like I guess Herbert. The Chargers are gonna be an offense, but like I just don't think you're gonna like gunsling your way out of Denver and the Chargers, and certainly not the Chiefs. Like the way you're gonna compete in that division is like grinding it out, playing ugly football. I mean, tell me if you disagree with that. But that's my take.
Well, that is how they last beat the Chiefs, because they're the last team to actually beat the Chiefs. I will say this though, Matthew, I'm a little more bullish, as they say. I saw him line up out wide. I saw him line up in the slot. Saw him line up in line. He had 2 catches for 25 yards on that first drive alone, and then he was gone. So they do want to run the ball, the Raiders do, but you have to be winning to keep on running the ball. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, this is true.
Then you got Luke Getsy. It's not a great number, but it's not a bad one. 2 seasons offensive coordinator as the Bears. The tight ends ranked 9th in targets at that time. That's what made Cole Kmet fantasy relevant, made him a tight end 1. So to see Brock Bowers in that type of range wouldn't be shocking. And when it comes to getting your best players the ball, I think he'll fall comfortably in second behind Devontae Adams.
Maybe, but Lawrence, the question was, is he going to see enough volume to be a difference maker? Where do you have him ranked?
7.
Oh wow. Okay, so you are definitely more bullish than I am, because like, do I think he sees enough volume to be a borderline tight end 1? Sure. Do I think he sees enough volume to be a difference maker, to be a guy like what Laporta did or Dalton Kincaid did as rookies, or as Trey McBride did in sort of his second year, like these young tight end breakouts? I don't. That's where I'm at.
That'll be tough. Those guys were amongst the top tight ends, and Laporta had you get 10 touchdowns, 900 yards. So for Brock Bowers, if he's getting 50, 60 catches, 700 yards, 6-7 touchdowns, that'll put him right inside that tight end 1 range. It's definitely going to be some weeks where I will be like, damn, why I take him as my top tight end. But then he might have some weeks where I'm like, see, guys, I told you. I'll be on Twitter. I told y'all, man. It's 1 game. So it'll be some up and downs. Yeah.
Real quickly, because you mentioned Cole Kmet, because you were talking about Luke Getsy, who, former Bears offensive coordinator who's now with the Raiders. One thing I didn't mention when we talked about Caleb Williams, that's the other thing that I thought was really interesting about the Bears preseason game. Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett both had a 63% route participation. And I don't know that, starters didn't play that much, so maybe Everett got more playing time than he normally would. But to me, the big takeaway is that Cole Kmet is being overdrafted. Like, you look at ADP, and Cole Kmet's being drafted as sort of a borderline tight end 1. He's going in that tight end 12-ish range. And again, with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, he was already going to be challenged on targets. And now the fact that Everett, who has history with Shane Waldron, wherever Shane Waldron goes, seems like Gerald Everett shows up. I think Everett's going to play more than anyone's expecting. And I'm not saying that I think Everett is going to be a fantasy option, but I do think he's going to play enough that it's going to hurt Cole Kmet, who is more volume-based. I mean, you think he's talented, but like, his fantasy value was tied to volume, and I don't think the volume's going to be there for Cole Kmet. So just, if you're wondering who's going to be on the hate list this year, like,
definitely not somebody I would say to target in that situation. No. As we might have to come up with a new term like tight end by committee. I see it as being something of that nature.
Yep. Gerald Everett, Shane Waldron, the new Darvin Ham, Torian Prince of the NFL, modern day NBA reference for you, Matthew. It's okay. Well, you got a year to learn who those guys are. All right, the Rotoworld Draft Guide is here for you during the peak of draft season, and this year it has added features available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the Rotoworld Draft Guide to help you crush your competition. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off and unlock extensive fantasy, DFS, and betting tools now. Go to NBCSports.com/fantasylife to learn more. Use promo code Lawrence 1.7 if you want 1.7% off.
My number's 1.7 now? Damn.
Yeah, it's trending down. All right, also trending down, Hollywood Brown, Andy Reid, as we get into the Rotoworld
the Fantasy Life Plus featuring the Rotoworld Draft Guide is seriously ridiculous. It is really, really... It is.
I said that in the promo.
I know.
It's great.
But I'm doing it off the top of my head. I don't need to read any promo. I just know how good this is.
Organic.
We spent over a year developing these tools. They're unbelievable. They will make you better, I promise you. And obviously, Rotoworld Draft Guide speaks for itself.
Be sure to check it out. All right, Andy Reid said that Hollywood Brown could miss some time with a shoulder injury. He suffered in Saturday's preseason game against the Jags. It is a sternoclavicular joint dislocation. Reid compared Brown's injury to the same one that knocked Tyreek Hill out for 4 games in 2019. So it looks like he may miss some time to start the season. Lawrence, I think beyond this injury, it's more just the whole body of work for Hollywood Brown's injury history, and it just seems like it's always something with Brown.
Yeah, he had some issues last year with health as well. You just like to see him get out there on the field, especially week 1 against the Ravens there. He was being drafted as the top Kansas City receiver, but he was seen as the best value because most people are pending or thinking that Rashee Rice may be suspended there. So definitely a setback for him. But on the other side, though, this give Xavier Worthy a chance to get even more reps with the ones he started in week 1 of the preseason. So it'll give him a chance to show more of what he can bring to that offense.
Matthew, do you think there's any pickup, anyone whose ADP skyrockets as a result of this, be it Xavier Worthy or Rashee Rice? Rashee Rice, by the way, who may not, it's not 100% that he gets suspended at this point. I think he might be the guy whose value might be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rashee Rice is actually probably being underdrafted at the moment because of that. I do think that, he played 100% of the snaps with Mahomes in the preseason game. And to your point, like what the NFL often does, we saw this with Alvin Kamara. The NFL often does is they want the legal before they rule on whether a player should be suspended or not. They want the legal process to play out. And so that's the thing. So like, again, I don't have it off the top of my head, but when Rashee Rice's case is, and then does it happen, and are there motions to delay and to, when he's out of the season and blah, blah, blah. And it just, court cases take a long time. Our court system as a country is just overwhelmed. It takes years and years sometime for cases to be seen. And so there's certainly a chance that Rashee Rice that the legal case doesn't happen until a point at which point the suspension wouldn't happen until next year. Again, if there's a suspension, innocent until proven guilty, blah, 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 all that. But I expected suspension for Rashee Rice, based on what I know of the case. But again, the NFL is going to wait and to see sort of what the legal punishment is, or what the legal ruling is, I should say, before they rule there. So I do think there's the chance that Rashee Rice doesn't get suspended this year, or if he does, maybe it's less games than people might think. So we'll see. I think if there's a, quote, positive to the injury here, is that it means that probably more playing time and potentially more playing time with Patrick Mahomes in the preseason for Xavier Worthy. So to answer your question, does anyone skyrocket an ADP? No, I don't think anyone skyrockets an ADP, but I would move Xavier up a little bit more because I think he's going to get more reps with the first team and more comfort level. The fact is the Chiefs use so many different formations and so many different personnel that they all sort of mix and match, and it's always so tough to pick on anyone that's going to be consistent. It's hard to say that there's going to be somebody that has consistent fantasy value outside of Kelce and Rashee Rice, as long as Rashee Rice is on the field. But I do think if you're taking a flyer on Xavier Worthy, and it's certainly a worthy flyer to do, I think you can up him a little bit, because again, I do think with Brown out and likely missing a few games to start the season, Worthy's going to get more playing time, not just in an actual game, but more importantly, just to learn the offense and get comfortable with Patrick Mahomes.
Yep. Packers running back MarShawn Lloyd suffered a hamstring injury in Saturday's preseason game against the Browns. Looks like it's just minor. I don't think there's anything to read into here. A.J. Dillon is going to be the number 2 to start the season. The bigger news that at least got people worried briefly, doesn't seem like it's too much though. The Giants, they think that Malik Nabers, he just has a minor ankle sprain. We'll say though, if you watch the interview with Brian Daboll from today, where he talks about Nabers, it's a little weird. He says, I don't think he has a fracture. It's like, how is that an opinion? Like, it's either he's got a fracture or he doesn't. But Lawrence, I can't imagine there's much to do with Nabers off of this, given that it seems so minor.
Yeah, it's like the Hollywood Brown thing is more of a thing than this would be. They're talking about Malik Nabers being day-to-day, so I don't think he'll be in any danger of starting week 1 with Daniel Jones. We're expected to see him have 39 targets in that week. So anyone who drafted Malik Nabers, you should be good to go.
Yeah, he seems to be in for a massive year. Also, he did an interview with Kay Adams immediately after he got hurt. So again, I think that is probably a sign that he is going to be fine and is set for a big year. As are we, gentlemen, but we are done for now. We'll be back tomorrow with Connor Rogers, going to tackle some of the biggest wide receiver questions heading into 2024. And then on Wednesday, we are back in studio, back on Peacock. Looking forward to that too. But until then, we'll see you soon.
Peace out.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.